Here's the thing. What is most dangerous, the virus or the effects of the lockdown? Excessive pessimism over the state of the economy risks undermining recovery and making a tough situation worse. This is the Bank of England's chief economist. This is not a man that makes glib, casual statements without thinking about it first. He doesn't stick his size 9s in there without being across the facts. Andy Haldane compared gloomy forecasters to chicken licking, citing the kid's story of the chicken who believed the sky was falling down. Remember that? It's a great book. You don't remember chicken licking? What? What? Have you ever heard of like Bar Black Sheep and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Ricky, our producer. It's not even an age thing. Amy's heard of chicken licking. Everybody's heard of chicken licking. Anyway, chicken licking thought the sky was falling down because an acorn fell on his head. Remember? That's the one. Yes. He still doesn't remember. Good. Spoiler alert. Got eaten by a fox. There you go. Anyway, he essentially advanced the metaphor, Andy Haldane, the chief economist, because he said that people who talk in this kind of way, the gloomy forecasters, risk dragging down the economy even as the recovery was powering ahead. This came as Boris Johnson defied calls for an easing of COVID restrictions, insisting the only way, these were his words, you just heard it on the clip we played, to fight a second wave of the virus is by making sacrifices which might have to get worse. That's the view of the Prime Minister. It's interesting, Matt Hancock doubled down on that. They keep making this comment about, there's lots of people out there who think we can do this another way. We can't, because lots more people are going to die. In a riposte to his critics, the Prime Minister told a Downing Street press conference that no matter how impatient we may be, how fed up we may become, there is only one way of doing this. Can we just explore those words for a second? There's only one way of doing this, which is rather interesting when you consider that across the world there's various ways, clearly, of doing this. This, of course, came after Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, had said it was time to live without fear, and many Tory MPs warned that lockdowns were damaging the economy. I was looking at the numbers. Yesterday, 71 people died who'd had COVID. Statistically, all of those people would have had underlying health conditions. In all probability, most would have been seriously ill, arguably as serious as it gets. You cannot remove that fact, those facts, from the overarching equation of 71 people dying. At the same time, I took a little look at the Lancet website and checked out the oncology section there. The Lancet, of course, is the publication magazine for doctors and clinicians, and the reading there is grim. This is what they say. Substantial increases in the number of avoidable cancer deaths in England are to be expected as a result of diagnostic delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And they broke it down. They looked at breast cancer, colorectal cancer, lung cancer, and esophageal cancer. And in each case, the numbers are horrifying. Those people that would have lived longer, those people not getting treatment, it runs into the thousands across cancers. This is not coming from a dodgy tabloid. This is coming from the Lancet, okay, the respected medical magazine. And the more I look at this, and I heard Mr. Johnson mention 71 people had died. 71, one has to assume, I'll say it again, very, very seriously ill people had died. In the same way that very seriously ill people die of pneumonia. That's kind of the way you, without any doubt, have to begin to examine statistics in this context. And I put that against the avoidable cancer deaths. Avoidable cancer deaths. Just let that settle in. Avoidable cancer deaths. Not situations where it might be a bit touch and go. Avoidable cancer deaths. People are dying, and it's avoidable they are dying because of the lockdown, because of the COVID issues, because of what is happening in terms of the pandemic in the United Kingdom. Now, it's not a competition between what you die of. We know that. But are we not now in the irredeemable reality that the damage being done to the lockdown because of the lockdown is worse than the virus? 0344 499 1000. Is that you? And this is just the health side, and we can look at this from a health perspective in terms of physical health, whether you have some other disease, whether you have cancer awaiting scans and treatment, or treatment that was just stopped, as one of our guests the other day who was having life-saving clinical trials for a liver cancer that began in her eye. She was 1 week in and the whole thing was pulled. So she was given a ticket to potentially live from an incurable form of cancer. So they thought there might be a way around this. Had a 70% hit rate in prolonging life. It all came to a sudden stop. She had to therefore crowdfund to try and raise money for the treatment. And I was thinking about this today. I'll come back to that in just a second, because I want to hear from you if you health issues and implications come in many forms, of course, physical, mental, etc. I would imagine this is happening in my own family. My sister sent me a text the other night saying, looks like, redundancies are around the corner. There's 100 of us work in the small company she works for. At least 50 are going to go. And she's looked at her role and can't really see that she'd be one of the ones they would keep. Redundancy package means nothing really, because she's not been there long enough in that respect to make any significant difference. So we're going to hit a lot of that is coming our way. So there's then health implications there's mental health implications for that. Christmas around the corner, you can't make the timing up. 0344 499 1000. The difficulty of just being able to survive, pay a bill, feed your kids, etc., all feeding into this. But in terms of the health side of it, it's funny, I was thinking earlier when my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer some years ago, and she lived for another 5 years after that. And the reason she lived for another 5 years was because of the treatment that was there, Herceptin, I think it's called, the breast cancer drug, and then various other drugs when that wasn't quite working. And we used to kind of make the joke that she was on the Christmas card list at the scanning centre. And anyone who's ever been through cancer will know that there's a process when you're being treated. You get the treatment, you have the chemo, you go for a scan, you wait 3 weeks, you go back for the results. It's the worst. I used to sit there in that waiting room in the oncology department thinking, that sense, the word you often use, I'd rather be anywhere but here right now. And it brought a whole new meaning to that, to just sit there each time. And you looked around and you try and find humour in it, because you're waiting for the results. And you look around. No one had a hair on their head. It was like a Right Said Fred lookalike competition some weeks. And you'd kind of find yourself trying to find sort of slightly dark humour in the worst possible scenario. And then you'd see people walk out the doors, having seen their oncologist. And they would either have a smile on their face because they'd had good news, or families would walk out in tears because they'd been given the ultimate news. And this went on for 5 years, and it was every 3 months. Back we went to see the doctor, see the oncologist. Everything looks fine. Everything looks fine. Tickety-boo. Great. Keep up the treatment. Everything looks fine. Go back 3 months later. More of the treatment. Back to the scanning centre. 3 weeks after that. Wait for the results. Back we go. Everything's looking fine. Fantastic. Back to the treatment. Back to the scanning centre. 3 weeks later. Back we go. There's a problem. Okay. And you kind of know that this is a journey that, in terms of what my mum had, it was kind of always good. There was always going to be that moment in the oncology meeting. And I was thinking about how awful that was. And this is as a relative, a son, my sister. We were invariably there together. If not one or the other would go. It was hand-holding. And you wanted to be there, but you didn't want to be there. And in all probability, despite how we used to use that phrase, I'd rather be anywhere but here. Right now, there are people saying, do you know, I would rather be anywhere but here, because they're sitting at home. There are people that want to be in that scanning centre. There are people that want to be in that oncology department. There are people that want to be sitting face to face with a clinician, getting the results, the scans, the treatments, the chemo, the Herceptin, whatever treatment it might be. And it just made me think about how horrendous it was. And yet, at the same time, this was life-saving. This was prolonging my mum's life. And she was never really in any pain. She was hugely inconvenienced. And it was traumatic. And it was there was never any let-up, really, because it's ongoing. And that is something that right now, as we sit here, thousands of people across the UK would quite like to be in that place. Whoever thought they'd like to be in the oncology department? Whoever thought they'd like to be speaking to a cancer surgeon? Who thought they'd like to be wheeled into a scanning machine? 0344 499 1000. And when I read the numbers and I look at the stats and I look at the Lancet and I read the other reports, I look at what Jeremy Hunt was saying today, I look at that amount of women waiting for some kind of breast cancer treatment or the next phase of their consultations over breast cancer and all that goes with it. And I think is all of that apparently, and bearing in mind, Mr. Johnson tells us, we can't risk life. So that's why we've got the lockdown. But apparently it's worth risking all those lives. My mum, in all probability, may not have had those visits to the department where she went. It might well have been a case that, depending on the timing, if she just got in there and started the treatment, maybe it's possible they would have said, we've got to delay the treatment. She wouldn't have lasted that journey. She wouldn't have got through that journey because of COVID. So what are the lives Mr. Johnson is trying to save? What are the lives Mr. Hancock refers to in Parliament just a few hours ago? 0344 499 1000. If you are right in the centre of that storm right now, I'd like to hear from you. And we'll take it from a health perspective, but there's the other side of it as well. Just the basic economics. Your job, your stability, your finances, your own economic situation. Where are you on that? 0344 499 1000. I don't want to sound grim about this. I'd actually like to employ what the chief economist of the Bank of England is asking for, and that is a little bit more optimism. He makes the point unequivocally that it is pessimism and associated anxiety that is as bad as the disease itself. I would say it's possibly worse.